God damn it. Go ahead.
All right, everybody, shut up. Welcome to a meeting of the College of Complexes. College consists of the following format. There'll be a brief announcements period, and then our speaker will come up and have 60 minutes to give a presentation, followed by a Q&A session where people ask questions with question marks at the end of them. Then it'll be our world famous rebuttal session where you'll have a few minutes to come up to the microphone and speak your mind. And then we'll offer 5 more minutes to our speaker for a final rebuttal. The college has 2 rules. First rule is 1 fool at a time. So that means you can't talk when somebody else is talking when it's their turn to talk. And then the second one is no personal attacks. And we'll start with announcements. Who's got the first one?
Well, I do.
Okay. All right,
We'll
Charlie,
go through
go
the
ahead.
schedule. All right, Tim, all set?
I'm getting the schedule up now, Charlie. It's just going to take a minute to
Oh,
share
okay.
screen.
All right, welcome everyone to meeting number 3,808 of the College of Complexes, the playground for people who think. Although I am not a capitalist, I will give an advertisement for our upcoming programs. Next week on March 15th, Reverend George of the Peace Pentagon will be telling us about her launching a mother's movement of women around the world to bring about peace. March 15th, March 22nd, we will have an open microphone. We have 3 speakers lined up, keynote speakers, and the topic will be what I can do to make the world a better place. What do you think we should do to make the world a better place? Get making yours up this week or the week after. On March 29th, Eric Mao, political analyst, will look at the topic of wealth in the world. I assume he'll be talking about poverty as well, but he's talking about wealth is situated in the world. Transitioning into April, we'll have the Illinois Single Payer Coalition talking about the latest, bringing us an update on nationalized medicine or national health care. On April 12th, this is our Earth Day series. We got 2 speakers in conjunction with Earth Day. The Illinois Environmental Council, it's a coalition of 100 eco-organizations, will be sending their Chicago representative to tell us about environmental issues in the state of Illinois. On April the 19th, yours truly, on our Earth Day speaker, I have a 15-question quiz, which we will go through, and I'll give you the question and answers. We'll discuss them on how green are your politics? How green are you? Should be interesting. I got a PowerPoint all ready to go. On April the 26th, former U.S. Congressperson Marie Newman will be here to tell us about power politics and how to start a movement and get engaged in politics, power politics or activism. Former Congressperson Marie Newman. At least that's going into May. We have May 3. We're looking for a special May Day speaker on socialism or organized labor. And there's 3 other dates open in May, 17, 24, 31. On May the 10th, Eric Mao will be returning again and he's going to talk about on the topic of multi-power politics. Multi-power politics. So, okay, that's it. Thank you. Take it away.
All right, I got an announcement too. For those of you looking to increase your speaking skills, in May 3rd and 4th, there's going to be the convention for the District 30 Toastmasters. If any of you are interested, I'll pull the information and put it in the chat a little later on. Now, is there anybody else who has any announcements? Okay. Go ahead.
On the 27th of March, NEIS will be presenting Night with the Experts at 7 p.m. It's by Zoom. And our speaker will be Mark Z. Jacobson. He will discuss the production of hydrogen cells for power, for transportation, and to supply power for other purposes. So if you want to hear about hydrogen production and its uses, please come. My name is Jan Budar, and my email is janbudar1@gmail.com. If you want an invitation, because you have to register for this, please learn to spell my name. It's B like baby, O-U, D like David, A-R-T. And my email is janbudar1@gmail. So send me Gmail and I'll make sure you get an invitation so you can register and come to hear Mark Z. Jacobson talk about hydrogen.
Is it up on your website? Because I got it up right now.
I don't think so, no.
Okay, but there's the NEIS website. I'll put Jan's email in the chat to get it for you. And all right, Justin, can you introduce Jonathan and let's get their speaker underway. Unless there's any more announcements. Okay.
All right. So tonight we're having a discussion about the most dangerous film ever made, Salt of the Earth from 1954, which the government did not want you to see. Our speaker, college regular Jonathan Barton, states, "This remains the only film in American history when each stage of production and distribution was impeded by almost every level of government, commerce, and even law enforcement. Many of the film's cast, crew, director, writers, producers, and movie theater owners who dared to show the film were completely ostracized for from even finding work again in the film industry, especially by the powerful Hollywood big studio machine." Join us as we freely discuss, honor, and learn and celebrate from this timeless classic of workers' autonomy, and remember the brave men and women who defied the odds to make it. Made during the turbulent times of post-World War II when McCarthyism was wreaking havoc against the US Constitution as well as the Bill of Rights. It was when some of the most creative tellers in America decided to stand up to bullies of censorship and totalitarianism. Salt of the Earth is possibly the greatest underdog story that most of us don't know or have ever seen. A moving tale about the ordinary, honest, hardworking folks who join together in adventure that illustrates the potential of humans willing to say no as a unified community and their efforts to defeat the corporate giants who presume the right to own our town, our labor, and our very lives. Let's put it together for Jonathan Barton.
All right, Jonathan. All right. Jonathan, are you ready?
Good evening, College of Complexes. Welcome to Chicago, Illinois. How is everyone?
You can stand up and back off a little bit, Mike. That's good. Just go ahead and talk.
Happy Saturday. I'm glad you're all here. We are now participating in system change.
System change. What do you got that pornographic shirt on for?
One full at a time.
The Portillo shirt? What did you say?
No, the Cubs one.
Oh, did they? My goodness.
I know. Wrigley Field.
I want to thank Tim Bolger and Charlie Paydock, our Freedom of Speech All-Stars, every Saturday of the year for putting on civics the way it should be, and by giving them a little token of my appreciation for their hard work, time, sacrifice, expertise, and support for our speakers. They are the real deal of America. Charlie and Tim, I have more stuff for your walls.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
So you got one for you, one for Charlie. They're exactly the same. You guys don't have to fight over which gets one or which gets the other. They're pictures of the film. And in the upper left-hand corner is a picture of the actual strike. That's not the movie that inspired the film Salt the Earth. So these are actual picketers who are family members and loved ones and spouses of the actual strikes that was the real strike. So I thank you once again for keeping the College of Complex.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlie and Tim, we thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Jonathan. Go ahead, sir. We're ready.
Yesterday was the 60th anniversary of the march from Selma to Montgomery, which is remembered in world history for Bloody Sunday, March 7th, 1965, when hundreds of people gathered and marched to the state capitol in Alabama to ensure that African Americans could exercise their constitutional right to vote in the face of Jim Crow segregationist system that wanted to make it possible. That was 60 years ago yesterday, so I just wanted to show this award-winning picture by James Carroll. I've got some copies of it if anybody wants one to take home. Unfortunately, I couldn't put cardboard behind it. Let's remember our history in this country. We joined together to fight for justice, and 60 years ago yesterday, one of those fights was in Selma, Alabama. So we remember those brave souls who fought for the freedom for everyone. One of the things that I love about film is it can open up our minds to dream what's not possible, to see the world that doesn't exist but should exist, and music and film and theater and art do that in all different types of ways. And the film 1954 is Salt of the Earth. There is another film, a documentary with the same title recently, of Wim Wenders' excellent documentary film with the same name, Salt of the Earth also. So this is the 1954 film, Salt of the Earth. It's a film that makes me really emotional. And, you know, one night I was watching C-SPAN, and Noam Chomsky was on C-SPAN, as he always is, at 3 in the morning or whatever, giving a lecture. And he got off the topic of civics and organizing current geopolitical affairs, and talked about a movie in the year 1954, Salt of the Earth, which was completely a curveball. I did not expect that from Noam Chomsky, and I'm a big Chomsky fan. He always surprises me. So he suggested why Salt of the Earth is a great film, and also the juxtaposition of the same exact year, 1954, another film about labor came out, which is super famous that we all know, On the Waterfront, with the famous Marlon Brando. And I love Marlon Brando. That was an excellent sign of one of our greatest artists of all time on earth, Marlon Brando. I don't like the film On the Waterfront. I love Salt of the Earth because they have two very different messages about workers. You know, one is to be suspicious and be wary of what are the ulterior motives of workers. And one is saying workers are the engine of democracy. If we don't have strong worker rights, then we don't have a functioning democracy. I liked it just from that aspect as a social studies fanatic and a civics lover. But then I started to get so attached to it emotionally because I saw myself in these characters. I felt like these characters were so real that there were some nights where I couldn't stop thinking. I was so happy that I found out about this film. And once again, thank you, Noam Chomsky, for the millions of reasons that I've thanked you at the College of Complexes. You're also my Siskel and Ebert for finding out about unknown underground cult classic films. The film talks about how in a New Mexico town, miners who are predominantly Mexican-American miners are working really, really hard every day to make zinc and copper to be the backbone of American industrialization and behind things like TV sets and record players and radios and refrigerators and of course bullets. So they're a huge reason why the United States becomes a military superpower on earth through these mines. And during the HUAC trials and the Red Scare in America, there was a lot of people who were suddenly deemed to be subversive threats to the United States because they were injecting subversive ideas into our entertainment, either on the stage or on the screen. And they had to creatively pool their resources together through a lot of different nonprofits and friends and labor groups and faith organizations and community groups and women's groups and grassroots organizing groups in the South for the rights of African Americans to find any work in any budget using their name. They could use a different name and still write a lot of scripts. And you know the big name people who were a part of that, Dalton Trumbo, one of them. And one of their producers was named Paul Jericho, and he and his wife went on vacation to New Mexico, and they got to talking to some organizers at this kind of like a bed and breakfast about a strike that had happened at the mine in New Mexico, Hanover, New Mexico, which is in Grant County. It's about 4.5 hours south of Albuquerque. So if anybody wants to go there, I am not a tourist representative for this great state of New Mexico, but it is absolutely gorgeous place to go anytime you're around. Paul Jericho and his wife met some of the people who were on this picket line and heard their story of how their lives were impacted by the union deciding that it was time to go on strike, which is a very difficult thing to do because the company, Empire Zinc Company, owns everything at that time in their town. They own the housing, they own the roads, they own the general store. The entire town is a company town, and if you say no to the management, there are immediate, real economic consequences that are difficult to undo unless you have strength in numbers. They had this, these outstanding members of the community just banded together and decided that they wanted the same rights as everybody else in other towns. You know, it's the ultimate insult added to the ultimate injury for Mexican Americans when half of Mexico's land was stolen from Mexico in the war, imperialism from the United States taking over Mexico in the 1800s, and approximately 100,000 people suddenly found themselves in the United States of America and not Mexico. So they had their country taken from them because somebody rewrote the pen in Washington, rewrote the map in Washington, D.C. and decided now Manifest Destiny decides that the European American settlers now, you know, own land wherever they decide to own it. And on top of that, the worst, most difficult health, dangerous jobs are the only ones that are available to these families who are now trying to regroup after this colonialism has happened. So they band together. The main thing they talk about is they don't want the mines to be dangerous to their health through either the gases that come into the mines, the collapses and the cave crashing in, the tunnel crashing in, floods and injuries. Mining is one of the most dangerous jobs besides working on the railroad or being in the military during military conflict, more than any other job. So it's really common for people to get injuries when the boss says, let's speed things up and let's have less co-workers checking when you're using the dynamite to make a new blast deep in the mine. And people are getting injured or people are dying frequently. There's systemic segregation and very widespread oppression of these miners at this time, where they finally decided enough is enough and they're going to go on strike. So we talk about this era with great appreciation for, of course, the Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration, Franklin Delano Roosevelt / Henry Wallace administration, and the New Deal and the National Labor Relations Act, or the Wagner Act, as it's known. It was a great time for quality of life to improve with Americans all across the country. Not all Americans. Domestic workers were left out. Agricultural workers, especially African-American agricultural workers, especially in the South, were left out. But it was an improvement from hundreds of years of labor struggle in America to see that finally there was some relief and a support and a safety net from the highest level of power, acknowledging that workers were the reason of people loving to live here. So the workers decide that they got to go on strike, and they find out through an injunction from a judge that there's this thing that's an anchor on the National Labor Relations Act, which is probably, when you've heard people like, for example, Ralph Nader describe it, it's as bad as Pearl Harbor or COVID or any terrible day in American history, the passing of Taft-Hartley. Boo, Taft-Hartley. Everybody, can I hear a boo from the College of Complexes crowd? Choir, boo, Taft-Hartley. It's literally a bunch of people who decided that there was too much democracy coming from the New Deal, making up a law that warps the intent of the National Labor Relations Act in a way that there was far less freedom to have freedom of speech at the workplace, far less freedom to organize, collectively bargain, to go on strike, negotiate, fight for wages, and seniority and life with dignity, etc., across the board. Taft-Hartley was basically a bill that once Roosevelt passed away in 45, they had a cooling off period, but big business for about 2 years, and then they were like, we got to reverse the New Deal. This is creating too many people to have too much confidence and too much excitement about knowing their neighbors and neighbors cooperating with their neighbors for workers' rights and for improvement of our quality of our communities, so that everyone in America can feel like the Bill of Rights and the Constitution actually is talking to them directly, and not just the wealthy landowners who happen to be male and happen to be white.
What year did that?
1947. Thank you for asking. I did my homework on that question. I'm glad you asked. Ernie, you get a free beer. So if you think of Taft-Hartley as an anchor and the National Labor Relations Act as a breath of fresh air of newfound space of freedom for workers to declare themselves human beings and not robots, not slaves, not serfs, that's why Taft-Hartley is just, it needs to be abolished. Every politician you hear on the left talks about it as if it's this big elephant in the room in DC that no one wants to talk about it because they're scared to death they're going to offend big business or Wall Street. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be a no-nonsense thing, just like Citizens United. If enough people are scratching their head at their dinner table how no one wanted this except less than 1% of the country, it shouldn't be in our national policy. Taft-Hartley is just really, really terrible day when they passed that law, and every administration and every Senate and House of Representatives that doesn't on day one decide to abolish Taft-Hartley, and they come to a speech and they tell you that they care about you as a worker, you as a family member, you as a community member, you as a contributor to the economy and the vitality and the quality of life of America, but they don't want to repeal Taft-Hartley. Don't trust that business person or that politician or that person in the media limelight, because Taft-Hartley is something that, which side are you on? Are you with Taft-Hartley in business, treating workers like they're not really people, or are you in favor of abolishing it? And there's no in between. Taft-Hartley is amazing that in my lifetime it wasn't abolished, but here we are in 2025, so we have another opportunity this year to organize to abolish this terrible law that is just anti-democracy being fully embraced in the industrial sphere of society. So the workers decide, after this injunction, Taft-Hartley says they can't go on strike anymore, otherwise they'll go in jail. Well, we got to come up with solutions. So they go to the local union hall and they talk to everybody in the community. Doesn't matter whether you're young, old, poor, rich, you have a rank and file job on the very bottom of the economic pyramid, or you're higher up with seniority person, like the one of the main characters, this guy, played by excellently by real life labor leader and miner Juan Jacon. He was the husband, Mr. Gutierrez, and his wife is played by Mexican actress Zara Revueltas, who was outstanding in this role, where their relationship talks about democracy, talks about family, talks about history, talks about all these different things that make the story so moving and so powerful. And you know, they're in misogyny, where women are seen as you know, assisting the men, and the men should have all the top positions of power and wealth and influence and decision making, and wrestling with that to come to an enlightened new era of equality. So they decide, when the judge says there's going to be this injunction, you're going to go to jail. When they meet at the union hall, what are we going to do about this? Well, the men are all not quite sure what to do, where does the solution come from? All the women in this union hall come up with the best solution to the challenge. They say, why, if you men can't go on strike because of this law from Taft-Hartley injunction from the judge that you'll go to jail, why don't we go on the picket line? And there's a lot of reluctance. And there's a lot of arguments that are just made out of, you know, because that's the way it's always been. There's no logic involved in the argument at all. And everyone keeps on scratching their head. How do we counter this excellent idea? So eventually, there's just enough majority of men and women, not in the union meeting at the union hall, but they close the meeting and then they have a town hall meeting immediately with the same group of people that just stay in there. And they decide, well, the women will go on the picket. And a lot of men are like, well, it's dangerous. You know, the police, we don't know what's going to happen. Your safety is in jeopardy. All these different factors that make a reluctance on people who have gotten used to it being the way it is forever in their lifetimes. So the female members of this town, Hanover, New Mexico, step up and they shock the world. They make the picket a family event so the youth can learn about democracy in action as well. The miners realize that they have twice as many people to talk about the strike now and to get the word out to the media and to tell neighbors and to establish their terms of negotiation. They're twice as strong now. They have way more leverage in the negotiation now that all the community is involved in this labor effort. And it's one of the beautiful moments in the film when you see the people carrying the signs, and it's really incredible. No dough, no show. We want sanitation, not discrimination. We want equality. Taft-Hartley can't mine metals is one of the best ones that I saw. The creativity in the signs, because I like to make signs when I go to marches. I kept on pausing the film when I was watching it over and over fanatically and seeing the words on the sign and the creativity and articulating their message of their demands was beautiful. So that's the gist of the film. I don't want to give away the ending or any more of it, but I want to transition. The reason why I started to have such an emotional attachment to this beautiful film, Salt to the Earth, was something that I immediately couldn't figure out. And then eventually I thought more and I realized, well, it's talking to the everyday person. It's talking to everyday human being about how your labor isn't a commodity. Your labor is your strongest right, your strongest freedom, your strongest part of why you have just as much to say about public policy than any big name rich senator or representative or cabinet member or head of state or vice head of state in the world. Your labor makes you equal to those guys who think they're on a pedestal to you and I and all of our communities. Your labor is your card that gives you admission to the dialogue of how this world should be. And it should never have a price tag on it by somebody who doesn't live in your community, doesn't know your struggles and your family's issues of concern. And I thought about what I do for a living. And I thought about, how is a home service provider, does this relate to me? So I'll just briefly read some stuff about what I do for a living, and that I saw part of myself in these miners. And give me some background. It's my great grandfather in Chicago in the 1900s. That's my great grandfather John Mazurek on the left side with two of his co-workers on the railroad on the south side of Chicago. When he came from Poland to Chicago in the early 1900s, that was the type of job you could get if you didn't speak the language. So you either became a railroad worker or a soldier or an agricultural worker or a miner. He became a railroad worker. So I think this is my grandfather, John Mazurek, and he's my great grandfather, and my great grandmother, Frances Mazurek, came from Poland to Chicago. And I think about them when I see this film, because it's just really, really great film. Here's something about my life as a worker, and I'm going to briefly ask two of my friends to come up for less than 5 minutes and share their experiences, but I'll just start off. The miners and the people who made this film, the people in the strike and the people who had been banned from Hollywood, had something in common. They were being told that you are marginalized. You are on the outside of power. You are not a voice that the public should hear what you have to say. You should be seen but not heard. You should work but not have any say in the direction of our country. So I thought about, that's similar to people with disabilities being told there's only one size fits all. Eventually you have to go in a nursing institution. It's similar to the disability community, which I'm a member of. You know, I had a traumatic brain injury at less than 4 months old. And I'm proud to say, as a member of the disability community, that I identify as someone who is free thanks to the grassroots organizing of disability advocates, because I know that I can hold my head up high and be proud of who I am. And I don't have to hide that I have a disability. And it's liberating because you meet other people with disabilities who you're lifelong friends with and build common goals with in organizing, and you feel no longer powerless. You feel like you have the steering wheel on history to make your own destiny with your brothers and sisters who understand that you don't want to live in a nursing home, and you don't want your loved ones or neighbors to live in nursing homes. You want them to have the most freedom and most choices possible. Here's some of the background on my job as a home service provider for people with disabilities. So I come from it from many different angles in what we call the independent living movement, which is the disability rights movement. The challenges of being a home care provider. The important profession of being a home care provider is constantly undermined for a long list of reasons. Here are over 20 examples that I thought of after reflecting on the 30 years that I've worked in the career I love. Home care providers are some of the lowest paid workers in the United States. We are not sufficiently recognized nor protected by law to organize and to collectively bargain compared to most other members of the workforce. And that goes back to the initial signing of the National Labor Relations Act, the Wagner Act. Agricultural workers and domestic workers not included. So we're at a different subpar level of being part of the economy, being part of organizing rights, etc., in the mind of the legislature. So we got a long way to go to catch up, but we have great organizers who are making amazing gains every day. We are isolated from our coworkers for large durations of time as home service providers. We're some of the most understaffed workers. We're some of the most overworked workers in the amounts of time that we're required to be available for the people who we serve. We're some of the least included workers in the many crucial decisions made by local, state, and federal legislatures that impact the quality of choices that improve the lives of people who we care for, and then as a result, limits our ability to remain in our profession for a long-term career. We have few affordable housing opportunities available to us, except in major metropolitan areas, which are just not enough overall. We lack the required income to afford adequate legal services. We work in very physically demanding profession, are in close spaces interacting with clients every day who are often highly vulnerable to various contagious diseases, yet are not paid a living wage that would make it possible to purchase the extraordinary expense cost of plans which genuinely offer us a wide range of options to meet healthcare needs. We work hours that are often not compatible with public transportation, bus, and train schedules. Sometimes when we go into a private home service agency for an interview, the first question they ask you is, do you have a car? And if you answer them honestly, like I do, I don't have a car, they say, well, you can't work here. And when you say to them politely, respectfully, in tone and content, well, what if the client that potentially could use my services feels like that's not an issue for them because I only live a couple blocks away, or they live close to public transit and I do, shouldn't they make that decision? And then they tell you that you're a problem and you're being argumentative and you should leave the office. And I've had that experience very recently where I've had those conversations where you have to be very magnanimous with management in these private agencies, especially because they'll literally tell you things when you tell them, well, that's not the law in Illinois. You don't need a car to get hired for a job that you have the qualifications in. If the client decides, or the family's client who has power of attorney decide, it's okay the first couple months if you don't have a motor vehicle. But they will tell you these things. You know, there's all these hoops you got to go through because we're not the same respect as workers as other jobs. Same thing with agricultural workers, farming workers will tell you from one farm to the next, all across the country, there are different rules, and you never know which ones are being enforced and which ones are being followed and which ones aren't. We work hours. We lack the necessary number of annual sick days to be at absolute best focus, energy, attention, and strength. We do not have necessary amount of emergency backup workers. We are rarely provided with lifts, either manual or electric lifts, even though a high percentage of our workers have spinal cord injuries, hip injuries, knee injuries, elbow, ankle, wrist, foot, hand injuries, many other serious pains due to the physically demanding daily tasks of helping clients to get into their power wheelchairs, their power scooters, their manual chairs, their beds, their shower chairs, their recliner chairs, motor vehicle seats, other seats, etc., which we are almost always required to do alone. You know, everybody knows if you're helping a parent or a grandparent or a son or a daughter or a brother or sister in and out of a wheelchair, two people is better than one. There's less chance the person will have injury who's doing the lifting, and the person who is being lifted feels more secure and safe, and there's less anxiety. Safety supporting the lifting process is another area that I'm big on. I think every home service provider should have a lift. Why? Because then nobody falls, and anyone, no matter whether they're tall like me and strong and physically able and confident in their ability to lift someone, or someone who is not as physically able to do that, can then lift any client with a lift, especially electric lift. We're in a profession that doesn't offer very many career advancement opportunities, despite the fact that many of our best workers have over several years of learning from vital first-person experience, developed an impressive list of diverse, helpful, strong, effective skills, and are highly respected by their peers for their valuable knowledge, understanding, memory of history, and advice for inexperienced workers, especially the young workers who seek mentorship from veterans of the direct care services. We contribute much more time and energy than we are expected to provide in our official duties because we must work in or at building spaces, communities, infrastructure, pedestrian areas, and public transit that either government, business, financial institutions, or other powerfully influenced organizations have failed to improve in order to be in full compliance with all accessibility laws. The Americans with Disability Act of 1990, or the Supreme Court of the United States Olmstead decision. This prevents people from receiving a full spectrum of life opportunities that the rest of the members of the community have every day. We work in buildings managed by administrations who refuse to add daycare facilities to their program, despite the fact that many of our most respected and diligent workers are parents, especially mothers. We lack the amount of vacation days that are necessary to re-energize from such physically, emotionally, financially, organizationally demanding work. We often are, for a variety of complex reasons, taken for granted and sadly assumed by many to be members of the work profession who have easy responsibilities and therefore in a highly bizarre unemployment nowhere zone Some were slightly better than room and board reimbursed volunteer work, yet never fully reaching the same level of respect and compensation as other professions. We're not respected as a vital part of the economy, even though our work is significantly more cost effective than warehousing members of the disability community in non-community based settings and or ineffective, unwanted, obsolete institutions. We assist people who we serve as they engage in the healthy self-empowerment to live as independently, as healthy, and as free as possible. As they continue to gain power and enact policies which reflect values of equality in order to reshape society into one that is accessible so that people with disabilities experience life the same as everybody else, and therefore we are financial targets of corporate interests. We foster genuine democracy, not only through the high quality care we provide for people with disabilities, seniors, retirees, people with injuries, veterans, and members of the community who are most in need of care, by the values we instill in each other, especially the youth who we mentor to carry our work on after we retire, providing a powerful alternative to hopeless despair that results from the assumption that they have no future to enthusiastically look forward to, and therefore we're ideological targets of political interests. We cultivate pro-peace, pro-justice, pro-family environment in the services, programs, and supports that we provide, which members of the community often cite as one of the reasons they choose to live here, work here, raise their children here, go to free speech forums here, and what Martin Luther King Jr. referred to as the beloved community. And therefore we are an existential target of the oligopoly proponents, powers that be. With that, if you guys are ready, take it away for 5 minutes. One of my good friends from the Alliance for Community Services to briefly talk more about this wonderful movement and how you can get involved to help improve the quality of life of people with disabilities, to get them out of institutional settings into community-based
settings. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, John, for the introduction. As they were saying, I work with the Alliance for Community Services. My name is Rose Bell, and I'm a community organizer. Definitely not as eloquently spoken as the speech before me, but I'm gonna be up here to talk about how we can get involved in combating these kinds of systems that John was just describing. I really loved his synopsis as well of Salt of the Earth because it just demonstrates the importance of organizing and having these multilateral movements of organizing. And so with that being said, as I'm sure we're all aware, the new administration is signaling their intention to cut Medicaid and Medicare that millions of Americans rely on. The administration's cause for these cuts is widespread fraud. And there certainly is a systemic misuse of public funds. But the people defrauding our public funds are not the people who rely on accessible healthcare, but institutions like nursing facilities who get blank checks from the government to fill beds. Regardless of what happens after, the result is a vastly expensive and inefficient and immoral system that robs from our pockets while pretending to take care of our friends, family, and loved ones. With that being said, our coalition, the Alliance for Community Services, is working to end this fraudulent system and humanize long-term care. There should be a flyer passed around, I believe. Oh yes, there's one over there, and folks can feel free to grab it. This is just a flyer advertising a meeting we're having next Wednesday, and for the online folks, you can feel free to text 913-302-0614 if you're online and like to get involved. But yes, we'll be having a meeting next Wednesday where we plan to talk about the various campaigns that our coalition is involved in terms of combating this fraudulent system and trying to provide long-term care from a human perspective. So I thank you for your time, and thank you once again, John, for letting me speak.
You want to say anything? Okay, let me know if you got anything to say. You want to talk for less than 5 minutes. Just jump in anytime. So when we're helping find out what the community can be with the potential of strength in numbers organizing, we want all voices to be heard at the decision-making table. You know, we want everybody to have a seat at the table that we built, in the house that we built, on the block that we built, in the neighborhood that we built, in the country that we built, and many of us defended, or our fathers or grandfathers, great-grandfathers defended. Here are some of the moments that I can explain to you why I love America. So if people want to know, so what perspective are you coming from, loving the movie Salt of the Earth? Well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. In the first minute, it shows a mom working, chopping wood, doing laundry, cooking for the kids, and on the screen it says "Land of the Free, Home of the Brave." These filmmakers and these organizers were not spies for the Soviet Union. They were not stockpiling weapons ready to destroy America. They are people who loved the New Deal. They are people who thought that workers should be the prime beneficiaries of the fruits of our labor. And they love the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. So here are some of the reasons why I, as someone who has a job that I have that I happen to love and be lucky to have, because a lot of people, they have the job that they had to get, I feel very fortunate. So I realize how blessed I am, and that's why I try to put so much time and energy to let other people know, keep going till you find your thing. You're going to find that diamond in the rough just like I did. My mom happened to have multiple sclerosis since 1979, so she took me to a lot of things where I was born into the movement. So it was easy for me to know. I kind of had an inkling that I wanted to help people. I didn't know how, maybe people with disabilities and seniors and veterans. Some of the things that I love America about on my job site is the moment when I'm providing assistance while opening the mail, the moment when I'm helping someone when they are making a phone call, the moment when I'm providing guidance when someone is tired and needs help before going to bed, the moment when I'm help someone to get dressed for a special occasion, the moment when I'm shoveling snow off the ramp which leads to the front door of someone's home, the moment when I'm helping someone putting on their winter coat, the moment when I'm plugging in a power wheelchair or power scooter so it can recharge, the moment when I'm helping someone try on a new pair of shoes, the moment when I'm helping someone when they are using their wheelchair or scooter in a large crowd of people. It's easy to lose track of who you came with, which is awesome. Very important if someone verbal skills have to do with part of their disability. The moment when I'm helping wash the dishes after having a meal. The moment when I'm helping to lift someone to sit up in their wheelchair or scooter so their back doesn't hurt as much. When I'm assisting someone to eat food or drink water during mealtime. The moment when I'm providing guidance when walking with someone who uses a walker or a cane or a service animal or holding their hand. Moment when I'm helping to carry things and accompanying someone when they are going to a picnic. The moment when I'm helping someone to buy groceries or juice and kitchen supplies and bathroom supplies and medications. The moment when I'm helping someone with laundry and folding clean clothes and putting them in the drawers and on hangers in the closet. The moment when I'm assisting to help someone, reminding them where something important that is very important for them to know where it is at all times is located. Moment when I'm helping someone by giving them encouragement and praise about how their day is going. The moment when I am there when someone walks up at night and is in need of assistance to use the bathroom or change their clothes or get something to drink or open or close a window. The moment when I'm present to help someone at their job or at their school or at the library. The moment when I'm helping someone while they're traveling on the local taxi or the local van or local buses or local trains. The moment when I'm helping someone by cleaning or vacuuming or sweeping or mopping or dusting or organizing or taking out the garbage or recycling. The moment when I'm helping someone open doors while out in the community. The moment when I'm helping someone when they're discovering new parts of the neighborhood or visiting a new town for the first time. The moment when I'm helping someone find all possible choices for clothes and hats and movies and food or drinks at the grocery store, books, cards, items on the menu, sometimes at College of Complexes, at Dapper's Restaurant. You can get anything you want at Dapper's Restaurant, as Arlo Guthrie used to say. A newspaper, compact disc, a candidate running for public office to find out more on their website, and get them literature so they can read up before they make their choice in the ballot booth, privately, alone, so that they and only they have that self-determination. Moment when you're encouraging someone to be confident and enjoy meeting people at a social event. Here's a little sketch I made of, this is not me, but this is supposed to look like me helping my mom get out of her wheelchair when I help her transition to another seat or another chair. There I am, there's her wheelchair, and I'm not an illustrator or a cartoonist, but get an idea of why I am the way I am. You practice patience to perfection till it's peace. You practice peace to perfection till it's something that there's no name for yet. You practice something there's no name for yet till it's second nature. That's how it's the most fun job in the world. I encourage you all to become home care providers at least one day a year this year, because it's the greatest career ever as far as I'm concerned. And I hope I made some believers out of some of you. Here's some information about the state of Illinois. The living wage in Illinois for someone, according to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and this is a couple of years ago, so it's probably higher, one adult who has no children is $19.29, according to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. That's for things like food, childcare, medical, housing, transportation, civics, other things, required annual income after taxes, annual taxes, required annual income before taxes, and miscellaneous items for the cost of living in the great state of Lincoln. Here's a typical annual salaries of different careers. Management, $116,000 a year on average. Legal, $98,000 a year on average. Computer mathematical, $97,000 a year on average. Architectural engineering, $88,000. Business and financial operations, $77,000. Construction and extraction also mining, $75,000. Life, physical and social science, $74,000. Healthcare and technical, $72,000. Education, training, and library workers, $54,000 on average a year. Protective service, $54,000 on average. Installation, maintenance, or repair. Art, design, entertainment, sports, and media, also $54,000 a year on average. Community and social service, $51,000. Office and administrative support, $42,000. Production, $40,000. Transportation and material moving, $37,000. Farming, fishing, and forestry, $35,000. Sales and related to sales, $33,000 on average a year. Building and grounds cleaning and maintenance, $32,000 on average a year. Healthcare support, $32,000. And at the bottom of the list, personal care and service and food preparation, $25,000 on average a year. So you got to learn how to be disciplined and frugal and non-impulsive and have willpower when you're on a spiderweb string budget as an organizer, as a worker, as a parent, as a human being, because the stakes have never been higher, where we need to all pool our resources together to defeat oligarchy and plutocracy and imperialism and militarism. And what I like to call, if you combine them all, extinctionism. It's not easy, but it can be done. And if you've got support, strengthen numbers from your neighbors and your friends and your fellow civics organizers, it's easier than you think. When we talk about people with disabilities being liberated, just like workers being liberated from oppression, there's a juxtaposition that we can make in that conversation between people with disabilities who are in independent living communities and people who are warehoused away in institutions and institutional existing. So independent living is democracy-based, institutional existing, nursing homes, non-community based settings far away from everyone else is oligarchy-based. In institutional existing, people are forced to forfeit their right to self-determination and are pressured to conform and submit to being under control. In independent living, people are free to live how we choose to live. In institutional existing, people are isolated from their community. In independent living, in contrast, people are included fully in everyday community life. Institutional existing has people being denied opportunities and choices. Independent living empowers people to have many, many different opportunities and choices. Institutional existing people are forced into a role as a spectator. In independent living, people are encouraged to contribute to the community as a participant. Institutional existing people are informed or updated, are not informed or not updated about programs and services and are often discouraged from seeking out what is available to them. In independent living, people regularly receive outreach about and are aware of programs and services that are available for all of us to use every day of the week, in some cases. Institutional existing, people are expected to tough it out and live without a safety net or support networks or an acceptable budget. In independent living, people are free to experience home services, education, legal services, community services, job training, accessible public places, public transit, healthcare, nutritional food, and clean water, which is especially relevant in Chicago with the recent findings of investigative reporting from journalists that were on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, because apparently if you were an American journalist and talked about the lead and the pipes in America, the press wouldn't let you publish that story. But if you're a British journalist, suddenly it's an important story to cover. So better late than never, I guess, American mainstream legacy media. Housing, privacy, infrastructure renewal, retirement with dignity. And institutional existing, it promotes and profits off a sink or swim mentality and dogma. And independent living welcomes and nurtures we are all in this together philosophy and spirit. Institutional existing increases paternalism. Independent living fosters self-determination. Institutional existing is I, the person, all alone. Independent living is we, the people, caring for each other, being one as a community. Institutional existing spreads oligarchy, and oligarchy spreads institutional existing. Independent living empowers democracy, and democracy empowers independent living. Institutional existing is a textbook example of nobody wants this. What's wrong with these people? To quote a friend of mine who likes to say that phrase a lot when people are driving crazy. Well, what's wrong with these people in DC is absolutely right. And there's something that some people in DC are watching, and I'm sure they are. They've got that unlimited budget to listen and watch all of us. Here's something that maybe you could do that you wouldn't have so many people fed up. It's called the LaTanya Reeves Freedom Act. Now, how many people have heard about the LaTanya Reeves Freedom Act? It's a bill. It's a bill before both the House and the Senate of the United States federal government right now that would enforce the laws that already have been passed for people with disabilities to live independently. So it's a step forward in that the 1990 Americans with Disability Act and the Supreme Court decision, the Olmstead decision, finally we'll have enforcement, so people will have equal funding, awareness, infrastructure, and prioritization in their communities to live in community-based settings, so no one has to go to a nursing home if they don't want to. This bill is the most bipartisan bill in history. So if I hear anything on C-SPAN, this is the most bipartisan bill in American history. If I hear anybody on C-SPAN from the middle, the left, or the right say that this bill weakens sovereignty, et cetera, nonsense. Every time there's an international treaty or a domestic bill that they just can't pass because it creates too much democracy for people who have been most excluded from democracy in history, people with disabilities, and seniors and veterans, people with injuries, I'm going to have to sit down because otherwise I'm going to faint, because it's just overwhelmingly ridiculous when you hear somebody in Washington, D.C. who has all the benefits for their retirement with dignity to never be in a nursing home, tell ordinary working class people who built this country, the salt of the earth, as you all are, in Matthew 5:7, as it says, ye are the salt of the earth. This bill should be passed day one of any Congress or any new administration that claims to care about basic human dignity. So just tell everyone you know, whenever you go anywhere talking about civics or DC, or what they can do to actually get some goodwill from the public, because most people are ready to kick both parties out of office permanently at this point, because look at the people in our lifetimes who have been in office, from the bottom all the way to the top. This is the bill, this is a litmus test where they really care about America or not. Because it's the most uncontroversial thing to say people should have a life of dignity. It's not threatening to national security. It's not threatening to business. The business will make more money because you have to build more domestic power wheelchairs, power scooters, manual wheelchairs, ramps, lifts, stair chairs, roll-in showers, etc. Business will boom. This is good news for all my brothers and sisters who want to see American manufacturing come back. This is a bridge builder. This is the topic tonight that I hope everybody finds one thing. They say, you know what? I love the fact that we're all together, even though we disagree on a bunch of other stuff. This is an American bill. You can find out more by going online to LRFA. Latanya Reeves Freedom Act.org. Latanya Reeves Freedom Act.org. Get involved. Tell your congressperson to pass it this spring. Latanya is sadly no longer with us. It's a great story. She went from Tennessee to Colorado because they were going to put her in a nursing home in Tennessee, and people in Tennessee at her local Center for Independent Living assisted her to kind of the Underground Railroad of disability rights to go to Colorado to Denver and help other people find out about their rights and liberties of people with disabilities as a career as a worker at Atlantis, which is a very famous center for independent living. So it's in her honor. Her birthday is this spring. I'd love to see Secretary Kennedy rally the troops with the bully pulpit, pass this bill. The last time a big disability bill was passed was by George Herbert Walker Bush, and I do love saying George Herbert Walker Bush at a free speech forum in the 1990 Americans with Disabilities Act. So you can get the base of the current administration behind this by saying this is your legacy. You passed great bills to improve quality of life for people with disabilities. You did it in 1990. Do it again in 2025. It's a win-win for all Americans. You know, a broken clock can be right twice a day. That'll be. The other one is leaving office. That's my pitch to the administration for an olive branch on one thing. Latanya Reeves. Institutional existing. All right, time's up. Okay, I got 10 seconds. Institutional existing, to cap this marathon of a talk, is a complete failure. Institutional existing stems from a lack of imagination, refusal to embrace the act of sharing the extraordinary resources we have, and if it's mainstreamed to the communities, will be the saddest surrender to the worst cruelty, the most stubborn control, and the most wretched of profit bullies schemes in history. Independent living is we the people's destiny, one that we willingly forge a highly wrought path to reach. And in solidarity, we build an unstoppable movement,
All right,
learning
thank
a
you.
the powerful don't give us our freedom, as we learned in this wonderful gem of a film, Salt of the Earth, directed by Herbert Biberman. We, the people of Earth, become free when we unite,
No, John.
organize, we work, and we wage a revolution of love and peaceful democratic mass mobilization, sometimes for general strike. So with that, I'll give it to Q&A. Please see the film Salt the Earth. It's online for free. I'll see you at the Peaceful Democratic Mass Mobilization to pass the Latanya Reeves Act this spring. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm glad that we got butts in the seats at Dapper's Restaurant on a Saturday night.
All right, let's go with
All right.
Tim, Karina, and
Ernie. All right, Jonathan. Without a corporation, there would be no jobs.
Correct.
Without a businessman, there would be no jobs.
Correct.
Now, where do you see, you've been railing against, I've heard you all talk about workers' rights.
Yes.
What about the rights of capital to employ labor, to hire and fire people? And what about the market-based capitalistic system? Where are your views on that?
I don't think money should be a factor in whether people survive or not. So, although I'm not a capitalist, Charlie, I could live very comfortably in Canada or Denmark or Finland if the things improved in my area of interest, the environment, peace, and the rights of people with disabilities. Those are my three big things. I don't want the planet to be unlivable. I don't want a planet where we make money off of endless wars. I want to make money off of endless peace. And I want people with disabilities to no longer be slaves. I want people with disabilities to have jobs. I don't want to just be tolerated. I want business to see the opportunity to make more through helping. I think one time I went to the House of Blues, and there was this great sign on it: "Help ever, hurt never." If American industry wants a great idea on a silver platter on how to make record profits off of helping ever, hurting never, here's your chance. Veterans coming home from Afghanistan need made in USA products to have their mobility. Seniors need more community-based in-home modifications. This is a huge issue in the labor community. There's jobs in infrastructure. There's jobs in public transportation that's fully accessible. There's jobs in more broadband, which people with disabilities need because they're in the house more, because it's hard to get out when it's rainy or snowy or icy if you got a wheelchair. Business can prosper again, and we can take that wonderful ethos that is encapsulated by Franklin Delano Roosevelt when he suggested the Economic Bill of Rights, and I've got it on my phone somewhere, the Economic Bill of Rights. When you have a country that realizes that in World War II, we won the fight against fascism, how proud we should all be of all Americans who contributed that, either on the front lines or here at home with the war effort. The crisis that currently exists stems from that very moment when we all came home and we didn't realize you have to win the peace for democracy then. That starts with workers' rights. I want management to not have an antagonistic relationship with the rank and file. I want management to know that Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, to be nonpartisan about this answer, should not make, what is it, 300, 400 times the amount of a worker? That's not democracy. I'm sorry, it's just not. It's economic insanity. Now, if you owned a company, I know that would be different than Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. I know that your version of capitalism is in the New Deal Eisenhower Eisenhower vein, okay? Not rolling back all these good laws that workers have rights in keeping, so that there's inequality, but there's also a balance where there isn't this, haves and have-nots war between, the plebeians and the patricians. So I know that your America, under your definition of conscientious and humane marketplace values, is one that I could do very well in as a home service provider. The problem is when I talk to people who want to rise the ladder quickly in Springfield, Illinois, or DC, a much different interpretation of what the future should hold for all of us in America, who haven't talked to you and won't talk to you, haven't talked to me, won't talk to me, won't talk to the everyday people, because they literally think, and I use this word a lot, they think they're Godsidents. Once they have $1 million, they want $1 billion. Once they have $1 billion, they want $1 trillion. Once they want $1 trillion, they want a gazillion. And what I'm talking about when I talk about workers in America are the engine, and we should be the prime beneficiaries of the fruits of our labor. We should end greed and hoarding and saying that people are disposable. And that right now, especially for miners and railroad workers, after the railroad strike, doesn't matter who's Republican or a Democrat, apparently railroad workers can't even have a sick day. Apparently that's just too controversial to negotiate with a pro-labor administration, the last administration I'm referring to. And this administration isn't any different. So I love democracy, but I don't hide the fact that I am a socialist.
Okay.
I grew up in a household where I was the son of a community college teacher and a guy who worked for the Department of Energy as a physicist, and a outstanding angel of a saint who was a operating room nurse and a home service provider the last 2 years of her life. And I love the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, but I also love Martin Luther King Jr. and Emma Goldman and Eugene V. Debs. And that combination is just too exciting for me to ever go back. So hopefully that answers your question in a bridge building way.
It does.
All right, we'll go Karina, Ernie, and then Jan.
Okay, Karina, nice and loud, please.
Right. In the salt of the earth, there's workers who do very dangerous work, and they protest a single mind. Okay, so when they're picketing and it's affecting a single mind. You're a home health care worker, you're in dangerous work, really tiny work, but you're not all working for one single mind. Who would you strike against if you had a strike? How would you protest? You're not working, you can't shut down a single mind.
You bring up a great point. It's a lot more difficult to strike when you're needed, right? That's why nurses can't go on strike. It's more difficult to do. Yeah. It's a combination of a number of factors, and that's one very important one. I would say that I read Thomas Frank and Chris Hedges a lot, and Shama Sawant. Shama Sawant, I think, has an article online that talks about 10 years as a socialist in government, as a city councilwoman in the city of Seattle, Washington, and the victories she had with organizing for workers who find it difficult to collectively bargain or even get a chance to be at the bargaining table. Domestic workers and agricultural workers were up against it because we don't have the same rights as other workers to bargain. So we know that we're not, they actually say in court cases, if you go online and research the struggles that have happened in the last 10 years or the last 15 years, it's not a real job for agricultural workers and home service. And it's so sad when we hear that, because tell that to the family members who see their loved ones in the community again, smiling and not staring at a puzzle at a nursing home or a television at the nursing home or staring at the table. Well, they know they'll get lunch again in 3 or 4 hours and maybe get changed in the good nursing homes. So America has to go through a reordering of priorities. We have to win the peace. After World War II, my grandfather on my mom's side was an infantryman. My grandfather on my dad's side was a repairman for helicopters and airplanes. I love the fact that we defeated fascism. There's nothing I love more than defeating fascists. I love that more than watching Chicago Bears win the Super Bowl in 1986. But we have to now win the peace. In order to win the peace, we can't just assume because we won the war that all the work is over. And it does seem to me that reading about this movie, Salt of the Earth, and experience as someone who understands that the promise of America is the potential for workers to feel fully empowered and not just, you know.
How are you gonna strike for higher
Oh, let's
pay?
get one, let's go.
I think well, when I go on strike, what I do is I go to Springfield with the person I provide care for and people who also provide care for others. And I go to DC with people who, with the person they provide care for and others who have loved ones who are in nursing homes who want to get out. And we tell the legislature that if we're the richest country on earth, it's not a lack of resources, it's a lack of will. This country needs to purge these two parties who have zero will to represent your and my values and all the majority of 340 million Americans' values. The way we go on strike is peaceful democratic mass mobilization for general strike to kick the bums out. And by bums, I mean, I'm talking the same language that, you know, you hear people like Dennis Kucinich or Shama Sawant talk about, and he said, the millionaire billionaire class. Why can't you just be 100,000-aire? If you've got $900,000 and you're running a great company that does outstanding things, that people love that company and support that company because it gives them pride as America. This is made in America. I'm going to support this guy's company because he's not a greedy oligarch. He's a businessman. He loves his community, knows his neighbors. He cares about the quality of life of the workers once they're retired. He wants them to have a retirement with dignity. You know, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about abolishing plutocracy, oligarchy, militarism, imperialism, and what I like to call cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on steroids, extinctionism. And it's not easy to do, but it can be
Next
done
question,
when we have
please.
the numbers. We don't have to do them all.
Okay. John,
All
next,
right, let's go Ernie, Chan, and Clark.
we got some couple online too.
All right,
So.
we'll get to them.
I have a couple of questions. The movie was based on a real incident, of course. But the movie itself, the characters were fiction.
Yes.
And I'm wondering to what extent comment on was the movie different in reality? Other than that, if you know, if you think that, or if you would. And my second question, regarding home care workers, I believe there was a bill in Congress, still is, the fact that family members can be caretakers. And my son is actually caretaker. Getting paid.
Yes.
And can you comment, do you know about that bill? Can you comment where's it at?
Is that local or federal? You're inquiring about possible local or federal legislation or both?
Both. You know, if you know.
Do you guys want to speak to that? About any current bills, either locally or federally, or you don't have to do it now, but if you want to finish it now.
Where'd our speaker go?
So I'll do the second one first.
Okay.
This Wednesday.
Yeah.
This Wednesday, come up again. This Wednesday is a chance to find out how to locally get involved, to find out about bills in Springfield. And my brother is going to tell you more about that.
Hi again. So yeah, I definitely can't comment about the particulars of that legislation, but I can say that on Wednesday we will be having multiple people who are experts in legislation and really just people affected by these laws who can perhaps comment on that. And so yes, if I feel like on Wednesday, if you want to show up and pose that question, I think it is very important because it does kind of get at this issue of, you know, being cared for by the people who care for us and not by this sterile institution that is essentially just looking to fill beds so that they can continue their bottom line. And so yes, hopefully that answers at least a little bit of your question.
Federal and state.
So we work mostly on the state level, and we have a coalition though of that around the country of different organizations, such as like we are organized with ADAPT locally and nationally, and so we do have partners that are involved at the national level.
All right, James Clark, and then we'll do. Oh wait, I was gonna get the first question now. The first question was about the movie. Was it realistic? Most of the people in the film are people from Hanover, New Mexico. They are not actors, and that's why it resonates with you. You could see their facial expressions when they're talking to the bosses. You can see in their facial expressions when their children are going hungry. You can see in their facial expressions where they're at risk of being homeless because an eviction is happening. Those are people who either were in those exact same situations in real life during the real strike in 1951, or someone else who they're neighbors with was in that actual situation. Paul Jericho and Michael Wilson and the director Herbert Biberman, they took a lot of time to talk to the residents of Hanover, New Mexico, to find out when they were negotiating with Empire Zinc Mining Company. And you know, this is one of the labor unions that was ostracized from the CIO. You know, there was 11 labor unions, I think, at that point, kicked out because they had too many people who were pro the New Deal. Yeah, it was just, the Red Scare was not a Red Scare; it was a New Deal scare. That's really what I came away with. And the thing about these actors' facial expressions, you look at them, and it's a documentary film 90% of the time. You're looking at a film of people that thought they would never be on television or in a movie telling about their struggles to the world. We survived this somehow. And what they're doing is giving us all hope. You can survive it too. Do not be afraid of standing up for your rights. Strength in numbers, anything is possible. And I love this film because the professional actors were very humble to have long conversations with the people who live in the town first. Say, does this feel right? Does this ring true to you, to your experience? You know, this isn't Hollywood pretty boys who go tan themselves by the swimming pool after a half-hour work in the big studios. These are real people who have sacrificed all their pennies to get this film off the ground and made. And it was a miracle that it did get made. And it's one of the testaments of America could have gone much different at that fork in the road after you know, the New Deal, and it didn't because of many different factors. This film is kind of hope. We can turn the ship around and regain. I love America. I didn't move to Canada when Trump got in the second time, everybody. I keep on coming to college complexes when I can afford to, because it's the greatest country in the world. It has potential to be much better than it is now. So we have to be honest. Just because it's the greatest country in the world doesn't mean it's currently living up to its capacity. We've got a long way to go to be a democracy. We're a democracy in name only, and it feels good to be okay to say that honestly to each other. Hey, we're an oligarchy. They say it amongst themselves in the boardroom meetings. We should organize to change that stat, because we found out that the same things they did during the Red Scare, guess where they did it first? In Italy under Mussolini and in Germany under Hitler. Everything is a rollout to see how does this work in another country. What they're doing in Syria right now, right? Head of state in Syria is a former Al-Qaeda guy. That wouldn't have happened without the help of US imperialism of both parties. They're seeing how much we'll tolerate. I think Frederick Douglass once said, the oppression, I'm paraphrasing, the extent of oppression that we have is the tolerance of the people who are being oppressed. If you tolerate this amount of oppression.
Next question, please.
Next question.
Okay,
Jan, Clark.
let's go. All right, Jan, you're next.
I guess I
Well, then if you want to just use the, okay, go ahead, Jan.
And feel free to wear the helmet if you like. Anybody. I love you. You look great. It's got a thing.
Okay,
It's got a thing.
here's my question.
You look
It,
marvelous.
it turns out that I use a home care worker because I'm really, really old. It turns out that I use a healthcare worker or a home care worker because I happen to be really old and I get it because I'm old. And what bothers me about the home, this is going to be a question, honestly.
You got it, hurry.
Okay, I'll hurry. Where does the money come from? Because this healthcare worker works for an agency, and the agency is accessed by Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities, I think, is either a city or a state agency, and then a city or a state entity. And then who pays Catholic Charities? Who pay? My vision of this is I just want my vision of this is that it's federal money that goes through the city, that goes through Catholic Charities, that goes through the agency, and then the person who actually does the work gets $14.50 an hour. I don't know if this is true, and that's my question. Where does the money come from?
Good question. Good question.
Okay, Jonathan. Thank you, Jan.
Look great in the salt of your miners. We're gonna have a raffle tonight. Just promise you'll come back next week, and that's how you get a ticket. So I'm easy. Where does the money come from for private home care agencies, for home care, public home care agencies? Well, the best organizer I know in the independent living movement in planet Earth is right there, standing right next to you. So do you want to answer her question in part? I want to yield to you if you got a better answer than I do.
Okay, yeah, give him the mic. He'll have to, might not read.
He's loud. Yeah. Yeah. It comes through the state. It comes through the state. A combination of different sources, donations, if it's through Catholic Charities, donations too, but it comes from the state. And so our taxpayer dollars are going to something that we want them to go to instead of another war.
Well, yeah, but the agencies are very administrative. I think the administrators get more than the workers.
The administrators get a lot more than the rank and file workers, yes. And that's one of the things we go to Springfield and DC to change. We don't want it to be a ladder. We want it to be a big circle. And we talk about that a lot. That's how decision making improves and there's real progress. When you have people who have more at stake because they're involved in the participation of the work, not just the overseeing of the work.
Yeah, who's next?
Clark's got a question, and then Charlie.
Who's got a next question? Just repeat it, Jonathan. Okay, did you get his question, Jonathan? Repeat it.
It's important that home service providers.
Okay, good. Okay, Jonathan, repeat the question and answer.
I
it.
think the comment is to contribute to the last question is through SEIU, those negotiations continue to improve the situation for the clients and the workers. So there's a more there's a higher quality of care and a higher quality of satisfaction from the care so that everyone can make it an actual long-term relationship instead of this constant turnover, improving things, progress.
Mhm.
In Illinois, we're one of the better states. And I can honestly tell you, if you can get a victory in Illinois with Springfield, you can get a victory anywhere because it's not very good anywhere you go in North America and on earth. So people with disabilities, Franklin Delano Roosevelt scared them for a million reasons, and I don't understand why. I mean, he was a capitalist. He came from the ruling class, upper affluent people, where he had his background, his education, his political teaching. If they didn't want Bernie in 2016 with such a visceral contempt for his candidacy, can you imagine what they must have decided that we permanently can make money off money. We don't need workers anymore at all. We can just make interest off of our millions and billions and trillions and gazillions in the next century. Wall Street and everybody connected to Wall Street has to go to reality class 101. And I suggest that they do it stat because it's a recipe for disaster. We've seen what happens when the public gets angry because they haven't been listened to. The ball's in their court. I hope they make the right decision. There's this great film called The Great Debaters with Denzel Washington, outstanding cast. And the final scene where he gives a talk at Harvard, this speech team from Texas is an African-American speech team. And he gives a rebuttal of, yeah, you better hope that the masses of working class people, DC better hope that we choose peaceful democratic movement, the next chapter of the civil rights movement, and not full-scale militant action to remove their treasonous selves from those positions of power, because it'll be the biggest mistake in the history of any overseer or king or boss if they don't take advantage of the fact that the sleeping giant is still peaceful. The Davidas and the Davids still have told Goliath, stop stepping on our lives, our communities, our jobs, or else.
All right, Charlie, and then
it's a problem from hell,
That's
but
Jake.
it can be solved.
All right, Charlie, go ahead.
All right,
Charlie, you're up.
Yeah, let me get my picture up. All right,
Okay,
Jonathan. A guy spent a
Charlie.
lot of money building that mine. And then those workers come along. At first, they tell the judge to get lost in his injunction. And then they beat up on the sheriff. Where did they get the right to take over some guy's private property? And then if it wasn't for Taft-Hartley Act, that would be, I don't know why the governor of the state didn't send in the National Guard. And if it wasn't for Taft-Hartley, that'd be taking place at every mine in the United States. Just some jamokes take over some guy's mine? Is this what you're advocating?
Well, the National Guard was notified in the final filming of Salt of the Earth because there were so many goon squads that they burned down 2 houses of 2 miners. They burned down the Union Hall. They shot shots at Clint Jenks. Where's Clint Jenks? This is Clint Jenks. His car was shot at in the middle of the night. A bunch of holes in his car the next morning. And the police were telling him, maybe you guys should leave town and not finish the film. So what happened was they said, if we don't finish the film, you're going to have civil war in New Mexico because so many people in the communities love what we're doing to tell their story because no one else listens to them except these outcasts of the Red Scare who have been blacklisted, these crazy New Deal pro-workers' rights radicals because they want unions and organizing, collective bargaining and living wage. So they did have to call in the National Guard and the police. And the police said, okay, we'll protect your job site. And we'll shut off the roads so the goon squads doesn't come in and hurt the actors. Most of them were the community. They weren't acting. They were just telling their story like a documentary film, like a Michael Moore film. I love Roger and Me when I was in high school, and I learned a lot from Salt of the Earth, just like I learned a lot from Roger and Me, and love both those films with all my heart and watch them often. Labor struggle in America have got a violent history, and I don't unfortunately see it ever changing because that's exactly what the bosses want. They want us to portray us in the media as crazy fanatics who can't control ourselves and have no civility and have no control over our impulses. When you're starving or your kid's starving, that makes you take measures that, what did Lincoln say about that?
All right, well,
Lincoln said something to the effect of, sometimes through militant means, sometimes through peaceful means, you have to reorder your government when you decide your legislator isn't representing your values. So it's a constitutional right when all other peaceful avenues have been exhausted for the people to have a town hall meeting and say, are there psychopaths and sociopaths controlling our community? Just like they kicked the King of England out of America in the 1770s. It's a lot harder to do now, so I would prefer us take our kids and our grandkids and our parents and our grandparents and a bunch of outdoor porta potties and do it peacefully and democratically the way King advocated for. But it seems like the government antagonizes people in working class communities where they just have no idea how angry people are on the south side of the west side of Chicago, what's happened in the last.
All right.
we'll go with Ellen, and we should probably.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Sort of.
No, it did
All
not.
right.
Do you think a group of employees can take over a company?
Charlie, you already got your question.
Oh, you
Gotcha.
mean the workers taking over the means of production?
That's
Yes.
I don't know if it is. It might be democracyism if it's in America and it's done peacefully and all the people, the majority. What if the majority of Americans had that on a ballot and they said to the Americans in the 2026 midterms, we're going to ask you if you should own the means of production, and it'll be peacefully and democratically decided on, and will peacefully and democratically accept the decision of the voters. That wouldn't be Marx saying, I want you all now through some underground subversive coming out of the woodworks, we're all frothing at the mouth, change of American system. That would be Americans saying that what if that makes industry better? What if it makes the product better? And what if America is then not entangled in all these foreign endless wars as a result of that? Because no one needs to make money off the war machine because they're making money off of peace.
All
So
right, we got Jake, you're
I
next.
can envision that being just a criticism of the failures of capitalism. It's not endorsing totalitarianism, it's endorsing democracy.
Jake, you're next. Go ahead. Unmute.
Baloney.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you, Jake.
Hello?
Happy Saturday.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I got two questions. Number one, if you don't like the two-party system, what would you replace it with? Number two, what do you feel about the whole concept of profit sharing? Hello?
Yeah, he's got it.
Abraham Lincoln was a third-party candidate when he won the presidential election. When was it, 1860 or 1862? My knowledge of the most famous Illinoisan ever is terrible, so forgive me. I was born in Champaign, Illinois, and I have a bad brain. But when Abraham Lincoln was elected, he was a third-party candidate. Here's a quote by him. All that harms labor is treason to America. No line can be drawn between the two. If anyone tells you they love America yet hate labor, they are a liar. If someone tells you they trust America yet fears labor, they are a fool. I am glad to see that a system of labor prevails under which laborers can strike when they want to. I like the system which lets a human being end their employment voluntarily when they want to, and wish it might prevail everywhere on earth. So there's a third-party candidate that got through. It's extremely rare.
Right. Under unusual.
Make the Republican Party and the Democratic Party dominance in the failed family or my family, doesn't care about your workplace or my place, doesn't care about your community or my community, certainly doesn't care about peace either.
Okay, I just want to follow up on that. Abraham Lincoln.
I would suggest you vote for is the one that actually does represent you and your family and your community's values, not the two oligarchy parties that have failed to ever care about your or my values. The second one, I forgot.
Abraham. Okay, enough. I just can I say something? Abraham Lincoln won under.
So the second question was.
All right. What about the? Okay. What about the other question? What about the other question?
What about profit sharing?
If the workers peacefully and democratically vote on profit sharing being in the workers' minds the best way to improve quality of life, have better job safety, have higher wages, retirement with dignity, and vacation days and sick days so they can provide for their sons and daughters a quality of life where they can go to any school on earth, then that's each community's sovereign choice to make.
Okay, Ellen, you said the last
It's up to the voters.
Ellen, you got the last question.
I want to go into a comment maybe too.
No question.
Just a question, Ellen, and then we're going straight to rebuttals.
So the main question is, what do you think about management revolution of James Burnham? Are you familiar with that, or Ayn Rand's theories that there's a virtue in selfishness and a virtue, really the managers should maybe, it seems to me, they think they're able to wage an invisible war on workers, and also the power of AI and how that's being used to wage an invisible war on workers.
Okay.
Quickly summarize the question, because I like what you said and everything just now. I just had a terrible memory.
The first was about James Burnham, who wrote the book, The Manager's Revolution in the 30s. And connected to Ayn Rand's theories of that the workers are parasites and useless eaters and selfish. And the other is artificial intelligence.
Sounds like Klaus Schwab.
Yes, right. How is that going to work for the workers?
Okay. It's our last question, Jonathan. We're going into rebuttals after this.
Okay, here's a quote by Roosevelt that hopefully is good to tie into my answer. If civilization is to survive, we must cultivate the science of human relationships. The ability of all peoples of all kinds to live together and work together in the same world at peace. What happens is, is when you find out you can make profits off of mass genocide happening right now as we speak. I don't have the appetite that I used to have when I was younger, because I realize that genocide is always happening where there's imperialist, totalitarian government militaries running havoc all over the world. And it's not just the United States. It's a lot of governments that the people in those countries are not happy with. And I'm glad you asked that question because, you know, my brothers and sisters in China, my brothers and sisters in Cuba, my brothers and sisters in Brazil, or my brothers and sisters in France or Canada or Australia or Russia or Palestine or Israel or Afghanistan or Great Britain or Ireland or Poland or Portugal or Mexico, they're dealing with the same struggles that Americans are dealing with. A government that doesn't listen to us, never did listen to us, pretends to listen to us, and knows they can make money off of war for their entire careers. And they can continue to tell us, why do we need them? Because they're protecting us from the enemy that they created. So I don't subscribe to the war economy. Smedley Butler said war is a racket. And he talked about the coup that fascists in America, American fascists, tried to overthrow Roosevelt, and they wanted Smedley Butler to lead it. You know what? A great American probably should be on Mount Rushmore too. Smedley Butler said, I'm not leading a fascist coup against Roosevelt. People like Roosevelt, and I'm one of them. God bless you, Smedley Butler. Your spirit is alive and well at the College of Complexes in Chicago, Illinois, and everywhere else in peace-loving
All right,
communities.
Jonathan, we gotta go to question.
All right, one last question, and then we gotta go for both.
Okay, rebuttals.
And be quick, Jonathan. You've been very verbose.
What?
Yes, I need an 8-hour talk, you know.
What do they do about Israel, Jonathan? What do you think about Israel?
You know, we're going to turn the spears and the swords into pruning hooks and plowshares. We just have the will to not be afraid of our neighbors and ourselves. It's ludicrous to hear somebody, Don Quixote, fighting the windmill here tonight at your service, to say it's possible within our human capacity.
Okay,
The
Jonathan.
things that they said were never possible that America has accomplished in our history. They said an African American would never be president. They said that people with disabilities would never have jobs. They said that a person with polio could never be president. They said that you could never beat the King of England, so just put up with the colonialism of the British Empire. There's a lot of naysayers in America. That's our strength, that we the people, we prove naysayers wrong. Can you imagine a world without weapons of war? Yes, we can. Si se puede.
Okay.
All right, how many minutes we got?
We got about maybe 20, 25 minutes or so.
So 4 minutes apiece.
Let's go 3 minutes apiece if they're
3 minutes
going.
apiece. Who wants to go first?
I'm gonna go first. All right, then you go second. All right, get up here and line up. I rise to let you guys know about something that Jonathan forgot about in his talk. And I'm going to bring it out a little bit later on. The first thing we have got to realize is that workers and people who have jobs and work is a divine gift from God. And it's a divine gift that gives us dignity. It gives us pay. It gives us, a purpose in life. It gives us a sense of being in a lot of cases. Sometimes a job is much more than just a job. For a lot of people, it's a calling, but for some, it's a means to make a living. And that, my friends, is a gift from God. And the thing is that most people don't, a lot of corporations don't realize this, because when you're out for the almighty dollar and unfettered capitalism, it is idolatry. When people go to build a business, they're usually trying to better their own lives, their own selves. And what they also should be doing is not only serving their customers, but also treating their workers in a lot of ways. You see, the thing is, one thing is wrong. If you're going to work and being a slub off and not doing your job, that's just as bad as a corporation who is pursuing unbridled profits at the expense of its workers. You know, the thing is, this market of capitalism has produced a ton of benefits. It's gotten a lot of people out of poverty. It's brought a lot of prosperity to the world. And free markets, when they're constrained, work. When you get an oligarchic thing like we have right now in the U.S. in the pursuit of unbridled profits, it's nothing but idolatry. Markets, in a sense, I say this with some reservation. Markets must be morally constrained, and sometimes by regulation. And that means using things like the antitrust laws. However, and we also must reject the extremes of this movement, like the extremes like communism, the extremes like unbridled capitalism. And the point of the matter is, we must return to a moral clarity in our own stuff. We must return back to a time where we all respect each other and respect God's laws for human dignity and capital where it is applicable to where we have ownership. How do we do this? Well, I'll tell you how we do this. We look at ourselves first. We repent of our own sins and we get back to church. And that, my friends, I think is bring God into this whole formula. Start rebuilding your stuff, and we're all set. Thank you, Jason. Justin. Michael.
Thanks
for butter.
Direct action, Jesus.
That's absolutely correct,
Jonathan.
Jonathan.
This is all right.
It is.
I'm down with that, Tim. All right.
One of the things I do is I take articles about the generation of power, and because electrical power is generated, from fossil fuels, from nuclear reactors and places like that. And one of the phrases I run across a lot is this phrase: investor-owned utility. Okay, so this means that the people who own the company that produces the electricity and the people who get the profits are investors. They're not people who understand how to generate electricity or how to market it or anything like that. They invest in a corporation where the people in the corporation are doing all the work, and their purpose is to increase the profits of the industry so that they can make more money. And yet they put out this lie. They'll say this is an investor-owned utility, and the investors say our purpose is to make sure that that the families of Illinois do not pay too much for electricity. That is straight a lie. It's their second purpose, or maybe their third or fourth purpose, because their first purpose is to increase the profits of the utility so they can make more money to give to the shareholders and to themselves. And I think that phrase, investor-owned utility, tells it all. And also, I heard Bernie speak. I went to Kenosha last night and heard Bernie speak. He spoke for an hour, and he said Trump's State of the Union address did not mention any of the stuff that Jonathan brought up. He said he spoke for an hour and a half. It was 100 minutes. And he said he did not mention any of these things. And he went through almost the same talk we heard tonight. And I also want to just say a clue. We can't ask people to vote for the LaTonya Reeves Act without telling them the number of the bill. I'm so embarrassed when somebody says, write to your congressman and tell him to vote for this or that bill. And I don't write to my congressperson, because if I can't give the congressperson the number of the bill, they're going to have to get a staff member to look it up and yada yada, and they're not going to do that. And so if I want them to vote for the bill, I got to tell them the number.
All right. All right, let's go with Ellen Corley. Ernie, I will go. Go ahead.
Okay, so 3 minutes isn't enough, but I'll deal with some of the three things I thought of saying. One is this thing I posted on Facebook today, a headline by Kevin Barrett. HH head RFK Jr. declares anti-Semitism is comparable to history's most deadly plagues. He says, calling anti-Semitism a deadly and virulent pestilence that is comparable to history's most deadly plagues, Health and Human Services Chief Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has declared a public health emergency and announced warp speed rollout of mRNA vaccines. Anti-Semitism is worse than bubonic plague, leprosy, anthrax, botulism, and chickenpox, all rolled into one, Kennedy announced at this morning's press conference. Actually, it's vastly worse than chickenpox. Have you ever had chickenpox? I have. I was 6 years old and I got to skip school for a week. It was great. Kids these days don't know what they're missing. And measles is pretty cool too, but anti-Semitism is really, really bad. And that's why we're going to have to vax everybody. Simultaneously, Pfizer and Moderna announced the near instantaneous rollout of mRNA anti-Semitism vaccines. Both companies insisted that their vaccines were quite possibly safe and effective and bragged that they were developed with unprecedented alacrity, 2.7 seconds and 2.4 seconds, respectively. Kennedy announced that beginning tomorrow, the internet would be subjected to public health campaign of draconian censorship. All individuals, groups, websites, bots, memes, and anyone or anything else suspected of harboring the virus of anti-Semitism will be ruthlessly deplatformed, debanked, isolated, quarantined, incarcerated in camps, and in some cases, defooted, desheltered, and deheartbeatized. Additionally, Kennedy ordered a complete national lockdown. Beginning at midnight tonight, all Americans will be confined to their domiciles, where they will be expected to repeatedly sing the Israeli national anthem as a demonstration of their commitment to eradicating the anti-Semitism scourge. Kennedy added that billions of face masks with Israeli flags printed on them would be distributed by Jewish essential workers who would be exempted from all restrictions, and that Americans had better wear those masks if they wanted to receive their food deliveries. Kennedy ordered all Christian and Muslim houses of worship closed, excepting Jewish synagogues and Freemasonic temples. He explained that DNA studies show that the scourge of anti-Semitism seems engineered to spread among non-Jews while sparing Jews. Freemasons, being honorary Jews, are also believed to enjoy a degree of protection. Kennedy's emergency order also features a controversial provision requiring all non-Jewish Americans to remain at least 6 feet apart from each other at all times. Though some scientists argue that there's no convincing evidence that 6 feet, anyhow, that's the thing. I also saw that this week there is a provision coming up in Illinois Congress for home health workers to be acted on. So check that out.
Okay, then we've also got Jake up there. Okay, Ernie, you're next. 3 minutes, Ernie.
All right, we'll try and do that. Yeah, Jonathan, thank you for a fabulous presentation. Very, very good. Thank you for turning me on to the movie. I did watch it earlier today. In fact, it's a great movie for anybody who haven't seen it. Although it's a 50s movie, it's black and white, and it doesn't have all of the whiz-bang explosions that you see in today's movie. But it was very, very good and very well worthwhile. Probably would have gotten some Academy Awards if they would have let that happen. One interesting thing about it, and Jonathan alluded to this, most of the cast were actual people, not actors. And I got a kick out of this. At the end of the movie, when they run the credits, they ran 2 parts. The first part said professional cast, and they listed the names of the actors and the characters that they played that were professional actors. And then it said non-professional cast. There was a very long list of people. They were people who had actually been involved in the strike in many cases, or at least they were from that area. So that was very good. I enjoyed the movie. A couple comments on things. Since there was just the topic of anti-Semitism just came up, and I would like to just say this. People are concerned about the increase in anti-Semitism all over the world. And I think I heard a number that it went up 300% here in Chicago and in a lot of other places. This basically, we can see this coming basically from one place, in my opinion, primarily from one person who happens to have a home and an office in Jerusalem. And I won't mention his name, but his initials are BN. That's where the anti-Semitism comes from, the things that he's doing. And unfortunately, it's probably going to last a long time. As far as corporate leaders and politicians, I think they do care. I don't think they don't care. I don't think there are people who don't care at all. But when it comes down to actually voting or making a move, they will be looking at their own interests and their own political futures and futures within their company. That our society the wealth is not well distributed. We need to do it, but mostly with a good progressive income tax. Now, again, we have to note that what Trump is doing, I've said this many times, but it's important. Tariffs are really just a flat tax, so that they can transfer the tax burden from the rich down to the middle class. And they do this by having a flat tax on everything we buy. Trump, I think he said he even wants to get rid of the income tax, which would be good for some of his people. Republicans have always played the system very well. We have to say that. Typically, they're less than 40% of the voting. I'm going to finish here, okay? They're 40% of the population or less, yet in many cases, they have much more power than that. Well, we have to give them credit for their cleverness, but we have to take it back. And as far as a system, I don't think a two-party system is the best way to go. I think a multi-party system such as they have in Europe would be much more worthwhile. Ownership of productive resources is not communism, it's socialism. And in fact, we have much socialism in this country. I've often said that the United States is the most successful country in the world, and we are in part socialist, and we are in part capitalist, and it seems to work very well. Okay, thank you very much. Got a lot more to say on this. Hopefully we can cover some of these stuff. The after party tonight and at future sessions. Thank you all.
Okay, who's next?
All right, Jonathan, thank you for sharing the movie. I enjoyed it very much. If you have any other films that you or Chomsky recommend, please let me know. The movie is good. You could tell that it was influenced by Italian neorealism in the sense that they shot it in a verite style, hired non-professional actors. The people who were part of the story as part telling their story in the film. It's all very interesting. It reminded me a bit of The Jungle by Upton Sinclair in that both were propaganda in a melodramatic fashion. However, I found this story much more grounded than The Jungle. And it was also less explicit in its desire for socialism or communism. Despite it being a propaganda piece and being produced by the union, it did not back away from critiquing the workers and the union itself, which I thought was very interesting. The workers in that, some of the male workers were not the best people outside of work. Many of them had moral flaws. And then it also criticized the union for not being democratic enough and not considering the women auxiliary in the same regard as the rest of the members of the union. It has been, it is in the public domain, which is why you can see it for free, but it's also been preserved by Congress as part of the, Library of Congress film registry. So despite its restricted release, it has now been preserved for posterity, and I think that's a good thing. It's a very interesting film from a particular time period that tells a story you probably wouldn't have seen in that time. Regarding democracy, I mean, I like liberal democracy, but I do think that there is limits. I don't think you can vote to steal things from your neighbors, even if it's their business. And I think buying stock is probably the best way to peacefully seize the means of production. And certainly workers bargaining, entering into contracts is a exercise in freedom of association. But unions want to be careful not to price themselves out of the market. Certainly government workers should not go on strike, and
Why not?
those workers should not be forced to join union. And the whole anti-Semitic thing that just happened, WTF. I don't know what that was all about. But my 3 minutes is up, and we'll go with Charlie, and then Jake, and then who else?
All right, Charlie, you're next.
And then Sid.
Very informative.
All right, Charlie, go ahead.
All right. First of all, I'd like to thank Jonathan for a very well done, and thank you for the gift and the presentation. I've got 5 things I'm going to go over. Number 1, regarding strikes by public employees, you get much better results if you go to arbitration or mediation. There's a thing called the Federal Mediation Conciliation Service. I've dealt with them on many, many occasions. Both sides present the issues that they cannot agree on, and they put you in separate rooms, and they got to be what they call movement. Otherwise, they will decide the case for you if they do not see movement. It is a system that works and is infinitely better than the strike situation, which is a solid win and lose and confrontational. Number 2, regarding these healthcare workers, it appears that have companies that are working under state contracts. They are functioning as what they call as a hiring agency or an employment agency. I don't know of any contract in this fashion which gets into the conditions of employment of the employees. These hiring agencies are used by the electronics industry in China in particular. They do not, these contracts only get into the services that they expect to be provided. And if you could get them to expand that into conditions of employment, I wish you well. I don't know if that's going to occur. Number 3, rarely in the United States of America do you get legislative solutions benefiting employees. We have the worst labor laws in the world. Any labor historian will tell you that in comparison. And to think that you're going to get a legislative solution, I would not wager that is going to happen, whether that's at federal, state, or local levels. The thing I would look to is that since you're excluded from you share a similar legal status as the farm workers. And you have to look into what the farm workers did. They had a middle ground in which they were recognized by states, I believe, as units of organized labor, in particularly California and the states of Michigan. I know that took place, and I believe New York as well. You should investigate what they did, since they share the same status under the Taft-Hartley law. So they achieved, through state legislation, recognition that the employers have to recognize them as a union. Number 4, Taft-Hartley. The one thing that's really nefarious about Taft-Hartley is that it got into controlling strikes. There's no common site as strikes are allowed, meaning like if there's a construction site, all the trades would go out if one of them went out. So, and then it really destroyed it, that there could not be boycotts. And then unfair labor practice charges could be filed against unions. Under Wagner, they were just filed against employers. And last thing I'm going to say is, ladies and gentlemen, there is absolutely no one at the federal government who is enforcing the labor laws of the United States right now. So good luck. They don't exist. There's no one that's going to enforce it. The employers have anything goes, and no one's going to do anything about it. This has happened before in the Republican administration, and I assure they have they've not appointed special counsel, things like that, NLRB, FLRA, things like that. So you can go ahead, report for labor. Let me finish. You could report activities of the employers, and absolutely nothing is going to happen.
We got Jake next, and then we'll go Sid. Okay, Charlie, enough said.
Thank you,
Jake,
Charlie.
Jake, you're up.
Charlie, can I come back?
All right, Jake, you're next.
Charlie, go get the, let's get the.
Jake.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for your talk. It was a good talk. Capitalism is here to stay. I don't see anything changing on that regard. Yes, we can put better regulations in, and we can give workers more rights. I would support that. But regarding the two-party system, when Lincoln won, it was a different situation. Number one, he was challenging slavery. The Democratic Party was mostly in the South. They supported slavery. The Whig Party was not really confronting it. So Lincoln became the first Republican. He essentially challenged the Whig Party, and there was a three-way split. And that's how I don't know how the numbers came out exactly, but that's how he got in. Number one, as number two, there were much fewer people. The election system was such that only white males could vote, so there were fewer people voting to begin with. Number three, we didn't have much more of the point. We didn't have the electronic media that we have now, television, radio, and the other electronic media, and so consequently, it wasn't the election process wasn't nearly as expensive. The problem is not the two-party system. The problem is our campaign finance system, which favors millions and billionaires. When our former Senator Paul Simon announced his decision not to run for a third term, he declared that his main reason for it is because he got tired of doing fundraising. He said, "I'm ashamed to admit it, but the last time I came up for re-election, I had to go out and raise $11 million, and that was like 20 years ago. It's probably double or triple that amount now. The point is, these guys have to go out and raise a gazillion dollars in order to run a competitive campaign, and the result is after they're elected, they end up becoming beholden to their financial contributors. That's the system we have now. It has nothing to do. What we need is a better campaign finance system. We need more limits on the amount of money that these people can make. Also, if you're going to run as a third party or an independent, it takes a lot more signatures just to get on the ballot. So the system is stacked against third parties at this point in time. That's all I want to say about that. In terms of workers' rights, I think that if a union or a group of workers wanted to buy a corporation and run it as a worker-owned co-op, that would be true democracy. But then you'd have to be very well organized, and you'd have to have people who knew what they were doing in order to make it happen.
All right, Jake, that's enough. Your time's up.
one other thing about anti-Semitism.
Jake.
Yes, I mean, one other comment. I'm gonna
Jake, your
finish.
time's
Let
up.
me finish. Let me finish. One other comment about anti-Semitism. Members of my family had experienced it directly. I'm not gonna go into that, but anti-Semitism has been here forever, and maybe Netanyahu makes it worse. But to say that he's the boogeyman only. What he did is he put down a violent attack on Israel violent attacks on Israel at a music festival he's also put
Jake, I gotta mute you now.
let me finish, please.
Oh,
He
you're
also,
done,
he
Jake.
also put down tremendous.
sorry,
He also
Jake,
put down.
you're done.
I'm going to continue speaking.
Okay, we muted Jake. I'm sorry, Jake, but we have time limits. Okay, go ahead, Sid.
And he also put down tremendous number of suicide bombers over the years. Okay, I'm finished.
All right. Now, or we can move you up a little bit more. Just start.
First of all, we've never been a democracy.
Good.
I think the best definition was Abraham Lincoln. He said a democracy is by and for the people. We've always had people involved and money. The average person does not vote unless you property. As long as you wasn't a woman, as long as you wasn't a black person. So we never had democracy. The United States started as an imperial power, vehemently. Henry Butler wrote a little book and said, war is nothing to America. And what he meant by that, the United States would send in maybe 20 gunships surrounding the port, like Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Mexico, or any other country, say, if you let us in, we'll exploit you, we're gonna invade. That's how the United States came to imperial power.
Okay, thank you.
It never had democracy, but it had it's a thin, very thin, near democracy.
Okay, all right. All right, I think that you want to say something too, right? No? Who else was gonna go?
Thank you, Sid. I love that you're here tonight.
All right,
It means the world to me.
close us out. Your final comments then. Get your final comments up there.
Sid, you're the man.
You want to stay there or do you want to go up front?
He's just getting started. He's our Yoda. He's gonna be-
Use the mic, make your final comments and we'll, get you,
I wish, hello? I wish Sid gave the talk tonight, because Sid, you are the chairman of the board, you are the elder statesman, you are the Yoda of the College of Complexes universe. And that last talk that you gave that I attended last year was a Swiss watch. Thank you, Sid Cohen. You're the reason why I love America and why I love freedom of speech and the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, Sid Cohen. Okay, before I start crying and get all salt of the earth weepy like I often do, I would like to suggest a great article by Bia Lacombe. It's called Undefeated: Lessons from 10 Years of a Socialist in Office. It's about the workers' rights organizer and Seattle City Councilwoman Shama Sawant. If people think that there's another America out there and they want to know who's someone who can articulate it, Shama is the one that I suggest to you. The article is again called Undefeated Lessons from 10 Years of a Socialist in Office. That's the future. Workers' rights at the center of everything, and it'll be beautiful. It'll be beautiful. Franklin Delano Roosevelt once said, I took economic courses in college for 4 years and everything I was taught was wrong. That's my rebuttal to people who think that market values on steroids, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on steroids is acceptable. No one should make 100 times, 200 times, 300 times, 400 times more than a worker. I don't hear anyone here tonight disagreeing with me on that. So I'm glad that we have a unanimous vote on that. Once again, at some of the brightest minds, that's why I keep coming back. We got smart people here. Here's a quote from the final moments of a film that I suggest that you watch. It's called A Crime to Fit the Punishment, which is a documentary about the making of Salt of the Earth and all the hurdles and how they were, many of them never able to make a film again in their country and other countries. Lots of family hardships and pain that are the price you pay for speaking truth in times of universal deceit. In the face of being attacked as un-American, the blacklisted filmmakers went on to truly commit a crime to fit the punishment. They joined the oppressed miners to create a crime called Salt of the Earth. Wilson predicted that the country would face a new crisis. They're referring to Michael Wilson, the guy who co-wrote the script with all of the residents of Hanover, New Mexico. They're co-writers as well. Before the end of the century, when diversity of opinion will be labeled disloyalty and extraordinary pressure is brought to bear against the free expression of ideas, a time when writers will be told to conform to government policy, and when workers will be pressured to suffer without recourse. In effect, Michael Wilson and his colleagues passed on a mandate to the new generation to look at the crime of Salt of the Earth, to understand its meaning, and have the courage to commit it again. One of my favorite peaceful criminals, good trouble criminals, poker players in history is named Justin Dart. Those of you who know the history of the independent living movement and the passage of the Americans with Disability Act in 1990 are familiar with some of his interviews, and I suggest that you go online and find out every interview with him, because he's got a lot to say that most Americans never have heard. Here's one of my favorite quotes by him. We need to get democracy. And I'm thinking about somebody who used to come with us here with us. His name was Larry Biondi, and he had met Justin several times and was there with him in DC during the time of the passage of 1990. So I'm thinking about our late great brother from Chicago and the organizers of independent living all over Earth, Larry Biondi, when I quote this by Justin Dart. We need to get democracy on the offense. Democracy has been on the defense against this resurgence of demagogues who would take us back to the days of power and privilege for the few. Now is the time when the disability community can help democracy to go on the offense and lead a revolution of empowerment. We have the power, live the dream, revolution of empowerment. One of the people in the film, that his picture is on the wall of the couple who are the two main characters, is Benito Juarez. He was head of state of Mexico on and off between 1858 and 1872. And here's one of his famous quotes, Benito Juarez: among individuals as among nations, respect for the rights of others is peace. And he's one of the characters that he appears very briefly, just his photo on the wall, but his history is outstanding. One more quote by another late great disability rights organizer, friend of ours, Sarah Capetillo: life is like a wheelchair. To be successful and get ahead, you got to keep pushing. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, for keeping on pushing, everyone who was on the phone, on the Zoom, and everyone who watched the playback of College of Complexes talks, to keeping the lights going, the cameras going, and the direct action going. I'll see you at the peaceful democratic revolution. You crazy complexity collegians, have a great Saturday. Thank you so much for being here tonight. The union is our leader, we shall not be moved. The union is our leader, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree standing by the water, we shall not be moved. Tim Bolger, thank you very much, sir.
And of course, I'd like to wish everybody now a good night. The College of Complexes is now hereby adjourned.
Doobie Brothers. I'm gonna start dancing for the first time, Tim Bolger. This is a great song. This is the most important song. You know I have the song at home. Tim, I'm so glad you chose that.
I think